Murphy's Law and Whitetails, your guide to North America's #1 big game animal. Today's topic is one of the most hotly debated throughout the entire whitetail world, and that is the value of culling at improving genetics in free-ranging deer herds. And the logic here is quite simple. If hunters can selectively remove bucks with inferior antlers, the goal or hope is that they will increase the prevalence of those with large antlers. Thankfully, over the last decade, we've had two landmark studies that have really, I think, put this issue to bed once and for all. Both of these studies were done by friends of mine in South Texas. The first was done by Dr. Mickey Hellickson and his colleagues on the famed King Ranch. And what they did was they took two 10,000-acre sections of the King Ranch, this is not high fenced, that had very similar habitat types in close proximity to each other. On one of those, they intensively culled every age class of bucks based on set antler criteria. And they did this for 7 years, during which they harvested 158 cull bucks. On the other area, the control area, 5 cull bucks were taken over that same 7 years, primarily by mistake. So a very different treatment and control experiment. And what they did after that 7-year period was to use helicopters to catch nearly every buck on both properties and measure age for age antler size. And guess what they found? That's right, 0 difference between the treatment and the control area after 7 years of intense culling. So they speculated as to why that was, and the best answer they had was that perhaps deer dispersal, deer leaving the area and others moving in, might have confounded their results, because again, these were not enclosed populations. So that sparked a second study. This one was done by Donnie Drager, also in South Texas. And on his study site, they had 3 high-fenced areas, ranging in size from 3,500 acres up to 18,000. So these are very large high-fence enclosures. And on 2 of those 3 areas, they implemented intensive culling criteria. One looked at culling every age class of bucks from 1.5 up. The other considered a more moderate treatment, started at 3.5 and culled through those older age classes. They repeated this for 7 years, and during which they took over 1,300 cull bucks. And they did so very specifically with helicopter capture crews. They measured these animals. If they didn't meet the grade, they were euthanized under permit. And after 7 years, guess what they found? 0 difference between any of the culling treatment areas versus the control. And they speculated as to why this was. And 2 answers readily came to mind. One, we have no good reliable mechanism to cull does. And of course, they control at least half of the genetic equation. Secondly, in the Drager study, they actually collected DNA samples and were able to assign a breeding value to adult bucks. In other words, how predictable a given buck's set of antlers was at predicting its son's antler size. And guess what they found? Almost no correlation. That at least in the wild, in their study area, the size of a buck's antlers did not predict with any reliability the quality of sons that that buck would produce. So these really put the nail in the coffin on the culling debate, and that is, focus on the things you can control, age and nutrition, and don't fret over genetics. That's it for today's episode of Murphy's Law. Hope you learned something. Until next time, be sure to leave your questions and your comments here in the video, but also to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to check out all the great content at huntstand.com.